Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, we're going to do a video about who should I book? Who should I book? How do I make that decision about who to book in my team? When I've got a bunch of champions, which one is the priority? How do we go about deciding how many books to put into that priority? All of those type of things. Now, when I first started playing this game, before I was a content creator, this was my biggest problem. This was my single biggest issue. And I was like, I'd say a low to mid spender. I would spend some money each month. But generally, when I spent money, it was on book packs. That was generally why. If I was going to splash, it was because I had a new champion that I really wanted to get into my team. And I wanted to complete their books. And I think it's a super tempting thing to do. But I think when I first started playing, I didn't have any discipline around how many books should I put into them? I just wanted to complete that champion. I was like, this champion's going into my teams. I want to try and get them fully booked. And in today's game, the situation is worse than it was when I started playing. And it is more and more challenging to understand how many books you should throw into a champion to make them as effective as possible. So I'm going to give you some ground rules around what I do or what I would do if I was starting again. And I'm also going to use some ground rules around what type of champions I book and which ones I wouldn't. I do have on the site a kind of feel for, and this is hard to do by the way, a feel for by champion in the tier list. What kind of value do you get out of booking that champion? So this first one I picked out, Necret, I've actually said you would get a 10 out of 10 value for booking that champion. And actually I would want to book all his skills. Now, that's not the case with everyone, by the way. But not everyone can book all the champions they want to do. So this video really is about kind of giving you some pointers around where do you focus. So let's start off with different areas of the game. So my number one focus for building a team in Raid would be Clan Boss. So Clan Boss, number one area to make sure that I've got the right champions with books on where they need them. We'll go into that in a minute. The second area for me is going to be dungeons. You need to be able to complete dungeons because guess what? Gear is worth more than champions. A well-geared team will get you further than 5 of the best champions in the game. Third area I'd concentrate is my arena team, but in a very different way. And again, we'll get onto that later on in the video. And then after that, really take your pick between Faction Wars and Doom Tower. But I wouldn't specifically book champions just for Faction Wars. And I probably wouldn't really book champions just for Doom Tower because for Doom Tower, you're going to end up using a mixture of your dungeon team, your arena team, and your clan boss team to get you through the content that you need to get through. The only champions that I would out and out book just for something like Doom Tower would be champions that are super easy to book, like an Armiger or something like that you can just go and farm the books for, or use mystery shards for the books on. So let's start with clan boss. Now, clan boss, firstly, again, you've kind of got to make decisions. What type of team are you building? Is it an unkillable team? Or are you at the position where you're doing just like a standard team? If you're doing an unkillable team, there's some things you just have to book. Yeah, you don't have a choice. If you're building an unkillable team and you've got Maneater, for example, you 100% have to book his A3, otherwise the unkillable doesn't even work. So priority number one is, if you're building an unkillable team, make sure the unkillable comp works. Okay, that's just as like a basic, easy one to get your head around. So let's assume that we're not doing unkillable and we're going for a standard comp. What's my priority with books in this situation? The first thing I want to do is make sure that my decrease attack champion has got the best possible chance to land decrease attack. Okay, and if you're short on books, then you might make different decisions as if you had loads of books. So for example, if you had a choice between Padma, who's got an 85% chance of placing a decrease attack for 2 turns, every time she goes on her A1 with 2 upgrades possible through books. Or if you had, like Jareg, who generally most people would turn to because his kit is generally better, but his standard chance of landing decreased attack is only 35%. So if you had the 2 of those and you were short on books, Padma will just slip in there and you wouldn't need to waste books at all. If you were deciding to book one of the 2 of them, you probably would end up booking Jareg Or would you? I don't know, actually. Both really good champions, but you'd have to make a choice around which one you're going to use. And if it was Jared, you wouldn't use him unless you had enough books to book his A1. And what you actually do is you go into the tavern, you realize that you need at least 6 books, so you put your 6 books in. In fact, with someone like Jared, it only takes 7. You probably would just book him 100% anyway, because his A2 is also a good skill to book. But if you had someone else, let's say you had Tyrell as your option, you don't really care about this A2 skill for Clan Boss, and you definitely don't care about this A3 skill for Clan Boss, so you would only put 4 books in at a time until you maxed out, in fact, 3 books. You don't care about this extra damage buff either, so you'd go 3 books and hope that you max out his A1 in your first 3 books. Now, it might be that they spread everywhere, and you keep booking until you get this extra 5% here. So the decision to book your decreased attack is kind of the first one to do, and you're trying to look for as much debuff chance as you can get, because it's the most critical ability to land. After that, I think other champions that become really critical are people like counterattack champions, getting the extra book into the counterattack skill to get the cooldown back. So if you owned Skull Crusher, Valkyrie, and Martyr, all 3 of them, look at the expensive path that Valkyrie takes you on to get her counterattack skill booked. So it might be that if books are a luxury to you, Skull Crusher becomes your counterattacker of choice. And actually, a lot of people do that because he's just so much easier to get the resource for. So counterattacker, you do need a book into that counterattack. And then ally attack is another type of champion where you really need to make big decisions if they're in your clan boss team, because they'll push your damage up a ton. So if you had someone like Creeler here, who's on a 4-turn cooldown but can book down to 3, and only has an 80% chance of doing her ally attack unless she's booked, you really want to book this A2 before you consider throwing her into your team. So if books were a luxury to you and you wanted that ally attack champion in, I'd suggest that if you don't have books, Creeler becomes like least important counter-attacker versus a lot of the other ones who don't have that kind of 80% chance to activate. So I think all other ones have got 100% chance of actually doing their counter-attack ability. It's just the books tend to give you more turns or a lower turn count for the ability. So decrease attack, counter-attack, ally attack are like 3 real priorities for me when I'm building my clan boss team. After that, you've got things like decreased defense, you've got things like weaken, poison abilities. They're all important. Debuffs are the next line of importance, like their percentage chance to land. But they're definitely not up there anywhere close to your decreased attack champion. So if you're talking about a poisoner, let's say we're talking about an occult brawler. Let's say you've got a occult brawler or you've got frozen banshee. It's a really good kind of matchup. With occult brawler, he's got a 50% chance already of placing his poison. You get 10% more. All of this is just damage and an extra turn on an ability you don't really care about. And then his passive happens whether he's got books in it or not. So he's actually got a really strong chance of landing poisons. Anyway, no books required here. And you get a reasonable improvement here. But I would say Cult Brawler without books is really strong. Whereas if we talked about a Frozen Banshee, alright, she's a rare, so rare books are easier to come by. Are they? They used to be. Probably not anymore. You've got 80% chance of landing a poison with booking up to 100. And you've got a 5-turn cooldown on a poison sensitivity. She can't land poison unless poison sensitivity is on the clan boss. So if you cannot book this down to 3 turns and you cannot get the extra chance to land that poison, I would say she's not worth running in your team. Certainly not versus an occult brawler. But even versus someone like a Kale, she's probably not as strong until she's booked. So, you've got Kale comes in unbooked versus her unbooked, where you've got a 4-hitter here, 40% chance of landing a poison, but also you've just got a straight 80% chance every time you attack with the A1 here. So when you get further down the ranks of importance, you then start making decisions about champions you're going to play rather than who are you going to book. So, and all we've talked about so far is clan boss, which for me is the most important area to invest your books in. So the second most important area for me is dungeons. And with dungeons, what am I looking for? And also, what questions am I asking myself first? So firstly, can I already beat the dungeon? Do I already beat the dungeon on... Can I beat Dragon 20? Yes or no? If I can, am I beating Fire Knight 20? Am I beating Spider 20? Yes or no? So if I can beat Dragon 20 with a team and it takes 5 minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, should I put these books in a damage dealer to try and speed up my time, but I can't beat Spider 20, chances are the answer is no, you shouldn't. Put books somewhere that's going to enhance your Spider 20 team. So let's assume that you're sitting on, I don't know, an Ultimate Gaelic, and you're thinking, should I book him up to help me with Spider 20 or Spider 18 or wherever you are? Chances are that he's going to give you more value for your books versus just bringing someone in. You've got your new, I don't know, damage dealer, Nuka champion that's going to massively speed up your Dragon run. Kind of who cares, really? Get yourself in a position that you can beat all of the dungeon content before you start investing books in your next new champion that might just speed something up. So what do I look for on dungeon comps? I'm looking for, is my decreased defense champion 100% able to drop defense of my enemy? So if I've got someone like a Juk here, and he requires in total, 6, 10, 12 books, can I get to 100% decreased defense to enable me to get my abilities off? And if I can, then great. I stop booking. I don't put any more books here. I don't put any more books here if I land my books here. But I really want to get to this 100% decreased defense and decreased attack ability. It's super important. And if I can't get there, the next question is, would someone that I can farm, War Maiden comes back up, would someone that I can farm still be better than someone that I can't book? And generally the answer is yes. 100% decreased defense will get you further and faster through dungeons than if you've got someone that's just kind of like throwing out 50 to 75%. So concentrate your efforts where you need to, and chances are, because we've got one that's available here that can be farmed, I would say that she becomes your priority over booking that new great epic if you can put those books somewhere else. So the first thing is decreased defense. Next thing is, can you do what you want to do with gear instead of books? And what I mean by that is, if you've got somebody, let's just say you've just pulled a great control champion, someone like a Gergo, and now you can throw out a 100% chance to freeze the whole enemy wave. So my question to you is, can you already control the enemy wave with gear? So have you already got Bella in a stun set? Have you already got AoE champions in stun sets? The Diabolist, War Maiden, all of them in stun sets or day sets, which are controlling enough of the enemy to help you through it? Or do you need to invest these books to give yourself a 100% chance to control the wave and therefore get through it? You know, someone that I always kind of advocate to book is Asilla the Drakes. And the reason for that is for the control element to Array 2. You know, a 20, 35% chance to stun twice the whole enemy wave. If you've got Asilla the Drakes already in your team and you can get, let's say, 2 booked, then fantastic. You've probably got your control down. After that, you then talk about damage dealer. So you've got decreased defense, you've got control, then you've got damage. And damage for me is always the last one to book because I think you get damage even out of control abilities. Like this Scylla the Drake's move, although it's a control ability, it still hits pretty damn hard. If you've got decreased defense already out, that's way more important than trying to book your damage dealer, because even a weaker hitting damage dealer will do a ton of damage to enemies with decreased defense on, versus a high hitting damage dealer trying to hit someone without a decreased defense buff out there. So decreased defense, control, then damage is my order of preference. And when you're talking about damage dealers, you actually want to consider what the books are doing for them. So let's say we're using Kale as our damage dealer. Now Kale, at that point, if that's what I'm doing, and I haven't decided whether or not to book him yet, I actually don't really care about the extra debuff chances here, and I don't really care about the extra debuff chances here. All I really care about is slamming out the 4 books into his damage percentages, and only then if I've got a surplus of books. So what's it going to do? Let's say you would normally hit for I don't know, 100k. I know he won't, but let's say he will. All this is done to do is take that damage and times it by 1.2. So 120k instead. It's a significant improvement. Any damage dealer that gets books, it significantly ups their damage. But you have to ask yourself if that's your priority right now versus a load of other things that you could do in the game. So the third kind of area for books is arena for me. So arena, it's really important still. Arena dictates your great haul development. You need a solid arena farming team. But the great thing about arena is that you don't really need to invest a lot of books. So let's talk speed champion. So everyone gets High Katoon as a speed champ. Where is she? Barbarian. Yeah, so everyone gets her. She's got a speed lead, takes no books. Auras don't take books. You've got a speed ability, which you could book the cooldown of. Now, this is where it comes to, is she just in your arena team? If she's also in my dungeon team, maybe I do want to get a book here. And it is a nice one to get a book in. If she's also in my clan boss team, I 100% want a book there. But if she's just my arena champion, I don't care about a book there because arena fights don't last long enough to ever use this ability twice. Arena fights, I wouldn't need this for either. She's literally just coming in as my speed champion. So once she's done her increased speed, basically her job is done. So for arena, you're deciding what am I going to use them for? And do I ever think they're going to use that ability more than once? So you go speed champion into some form of control champion and ask yourself the question again, have I already got someone that's booked out for my dungeon team that can do the same job in the same build? So if I've already got Syl booked on her A2, she might come in as my preference for a control champion, even over someone better. So let's say we've got an Umbral. Umbral is way better at doing that job than Syl, however, because she can do an AoE provoke. However, if I cannot get this 20% extra chance to provoke, and I've already got Syl built for control, maybe I save my books and save my build and just go for bringing Syl into that position. But for me, the order of play is speed champion, generally you don't need a book because they do their job with or without their books. Control champion, ideally you want it to land on 100% of the enemy. So if I am using Umbral, this extra 20% chance to land my provoke is really strong. But if I don't have it, this is what I'm thinking as well. I'm still going to probably get 3 out of 4 of the enemy. So I'm playing with RNG at that point, but it's not the end of the world, depending on where you are in the arena. If we're talking a plat pusher, of course, you need the 100%. If we're talking about someone who's just kind of working their way up through gold, then 80% chance is probably enough. You then have your decreased defense champion come in to drop the enemy stats. Again, if you've got a choice of a War Maiden that's 100% and, I don't know, a Stag Knight who is not fully built yet. Where's Stag Knight? Bannerlords. And a Stag Knight who's not fully booked yet, then you go with War Maiden because a 70% chance to land decreased defense is not high enough. Whereas if you book him out fully, he actually is strong enough. And then you come into your nuker. Now, the question you've got to ask yourself with the nuker is, what do books give me for damage? Okay, so if we take, a lot of people are going to be getting Astralon if they're going for that fusion right now. What is Astralon? Yeah, and this A3 ability. Now, the A3 ability, if I got 2 books into it, I'd get 20% more damage. But you've got to ask yourself the question is, do I need them? Do I need to put more damage into this champion? Or actually, can he do his ability and kill the whole enemy team with the build I've got without books at all? The debuff chance bit is actually a nice to have, a stun. But if you're building him full nuke without accuracy, then you don't even land the stun anyway. So a lot depends on what you're going to use your champion for as to whether or not you're going to put any books into them. And then when we talk about stuff like Faction Wars and Doom Tower, honestly, Unless you're pushing the end of the game, you probably don't book them at all. So yeah, once we get to Faction Wars, it's really a case of I wouldn't put additional books in people that I'm not going to build out to be part of one of these other teams that I've just spoken about. I would build champions that have already got a good chance to land their abilities, as in level them. I wouldn't book them. And if I do throw books anywhere, it's generally going to be around either control champions or turn meter control champions that are specifically required to beat that faction. And that's when you get right towards the end of those faction war stages. So guys, look, Doom Tower, I guess, comes in as the last one. And I would just say, use champions that you've built for all of this other content in Doom Tower that you've already got books on that already makes sense. But it's about building that team synergy rather than individual like damage dealers. So, look, guys, I hope that's useful. I get asked this question a ton. Should I book this champion? Should I book this champion? The answer actually is always, it depends on your team comp. It depends what you're using them for. It depends how much of a difference those books are going to make to their job, to their requirement for that dungeon. And should I book this champion? Probably never in full for most champions. Stop booking when you've got that additional debuff chance or that additional cooldown you need or the additional damage you need on the nuker. But understand what their role is and then book accordingly to your teams. Hope that's been useful. I've been Hell Hades. I'll catch you later.